really see a whole lot coming from him this weekend.
Yeah, I think our secondary is extremely, extremely young, and we're kind of learning on the job. I believe both of my starting cornerbacks, well, I guess my nickel corner and my other starting cornerback are both in their second year. The only guy we had that's been around a while is Tremaine Brock, but I think we're kind of learning on the job, and I'm with you. They surprised me too against the Packers. We actually hung in there defensively. We just couldn't do anything on offense. All right, let's move on to the next game here. We got the Saints going into Philadelphia to face the Eagles. Now, one of the notes that I had here is, is this the breakout game for Spiller? Looking at his fantasy stats, you might have thought that his breakout game was actually last week, but really it was one play. I mean, he had the 180-yard catch for a touchdown that really put him on the map as far as fantasy. But before that, he really didn't have a whole lot of production. Do you think Spiller has a breakout game eventually, and do you think this could be the week?
For me on Spiller, it's not when his breakout game will be. It's more when he's going to break a leg or something. The dude can't stay healthy. I'm more on the Mark Ingram train. He's so close to being great every week. He's just one goal line carry away. For some reason, they always run Kyrie Robinson on the goal line. I think Ingram had roughly 23 touches last week, which is probably top 10 for the week. So, yeah, I'm not on the Spiller train whatsoever.
Yeah, I was high on him in the preseason, reading all the beat reporters talking about how he would get 60 catches this season and how they were going to utilize him in the Darren Sproles type role. We just haven't seen it yet. That Saints offense in general hasn't looked like we're used to seeing. I thought they would be still pretty decent on offense, and I'm with you. I think Spiller, more so than just staying healthy, I think predicting those big games is what's going to be difficult week in and week out. I mean, you're going to look at it one week and go, I think, he's got a good matchup. He could, break out this game, but then he does nothing. And then he has a game like last week where did nothing basically the whole game and then had the 180-yard run. That's kind of what Spiller's been his whole career, even in Buffalo. He was the one big play. He was, the punt return, kick return for a touchdown guy, or he was the take it to the house 60-yard touchdown guy, but he was never the grind it out, I'm going to get a ton of volume and sort of, get my points that way. So I'm definitely avoiding Spiller, at least until I see some more consistency. He's definitely a PPR kind of guy and hasn't even been seeing many targets in that respect either. So definitely waiting on Spiller a little bit. Another guy in that offense, too, that I had really high in the preseason that just hasn't done anything, and that's Brandon Cooks. He's been sort of he's been decent in PPR. He's catching 6 or 7 balls. So PPR, he's still viable. But are we worried about Brandon Cooks? I mean, is he not a number one receiver? Is that what the problem is? Does he need somebody out there like a Jimmy Graham to get him open?
I'm kind of seeing he's not a number one receiver, honestly. I think he needs somebody a little bigger to take some of the targets, like Calvin Johnson type of player. And he's more like a Wes Welker, Julian Edelman kind of guy, put him in the slot, let it go. So far, he's only had actually 31 targets, which really surprised me when I looked at that. But I think he went from a wide receiver 1 or 2 for your fantasy team to just a flex start at best. But I think Breeze is going to get it going eventually, so I'm not worried about him just yet. I actually just wrote an article for Going for Two today called Keep 'em or Cut 'em, and he's on my keep 'em list, so stick with him.
Well, I hope you're right, because I actually have him in both the leagues that I really care about, and yeah, he's gone from my wide receiver 2 down to a flex. I actually believe this past weekend I benched him for Stevie Johnson, which I could have gone either way, and neither one of them were any good. But so yeah, Cooks has kind of fallen down on my roster here. I got a couple guys that are struggling. Going over to the Eagle side, of course, the huge off-season signing of DeMarco Murray has not panned out. Do we think he turns it around? Is this time to buy low, to find another owner that might be selling him really low? Or do we think that he doesn't fit that Chip Kelly offense and he's going to struggle the entire year?
Well, I think you're right. I think it's time to buy low on DeMarco. But one thing he has proven this year is that the Dallas Cowboys O-line is legit, and the Eagles isn't quite as good as we thought they were. It's tough to say if he fits Kelly's offense, because he really hasn't been involved. I mean, I think Ryan Matthews and Sproles are a little bit better fit, but the guys got to get some carries. They've got to do something. They've got to change something to get their season going. He's facing New Orleans this weekend, who's actually 16th versus runners. So he's got a shot this weekend to be a sneaky play.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching NFL Network the other day, and they were showing how Murray in Dallas, basically was a one-cut runner, going downhill. And in Philadelphia, they're trying to, stretch him out, make him get to the sidelines, and it's just not his game. I mean, he's basically a one-cut and go, put your foot in the ground and just put your head down and get the yards. And I think they're using him wrong. I think Ryan Matthews does fit that offense a little bit better. So I think Chip Kelly's going to have to sort of change his offense a little bit if he wants to make use of DeMarco Murray, in my opinion. Another guy that I had not really high. I had him as sort of as a deep round sleeper. Looked really good in the preseason and then just has disappeared. I mean, for the first couple games, he was just doing nothing. Actually had a nice little catch in the last game. We're talking about Nelson Aguilar. Of course, he had that long one-handed grab that was spectacular against the Redskins, and then the very next play fumbled a pitch. Do you think Nelson Aguilar is worth stashing on your bench, or do you think it's time to cut bait with him?
I've actually got him in one of our leagues, and I'm giving him one more week before I cut my losses on him. He's got so much talent, but like I was saying with Kelly offense, it's just like they haven't figured it out yet. Nobody has got the expectations where I wanted them. Bradford, Murray, so on. So he's facing a surprisingly decent Saints defense at night versus receivers. And they got Keenan Lewis back, and they got Bird back, and I think he's going to have another tough week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm still stashing him. Just going to hold on to him as long as I can. It's tough right now going through these bye weeks, trying to fill in and keep him on my bench, basically, not be able to use him. So I'm hoping that eventually we see something from him. At least give him some targets. I think he had maybe one target in the first game, 2 in the next game. If he's getting 6, 7, 8 targets and he's just not catching the ball, that's different. But he's just not even seeing the targets right now. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next game here. We have the Bears, who surprised me that Cutler even came back last week. So that Bears offense definitely looked a little better than it had in the previous week, where I think they were like the first team to punt on every possession and not have a single turnover. Which is crazy. But we get the Bears going to the Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, Eddie Royal had a pretty decent game this past weekend with Alshon Jeffrey still out and Cutler back in. Is he legit? I mean, even when Alshon Jeffrey finally comes back, is he going to step into that number 2 role and be someone we can put in our lineups week in and week out? Or do you think it's a one-week thing?
I think he's legit. His best season so far in his career was his rookie year in Denver, and that's when Cutler was in Denver. I think it was the year before Cutler left, and he had 91 catches that year. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to get 91 catches this year, but I think he's going to get it going, and I think he's going to be a solid flex option and definitely a solid DFS option going forward.
Yeah, that's actually a good stat. I actually forgot that his rookie season was in Denver with Cutler. So they already have that sort of chemistry already there. Of course, he had that year in San Diego where he just basically caught touchdowns. I think he had a few weeks in a row where he basically caught 1 touchdowns every game. So I'm with you. I think as long as Cutler is healthy, I think if Jimmy Clausen's in the game, we're worried about their entire offense. But as long as Cutler's there, I think I wrote an article about Cutler saying his receivers are always viable in fantasy, because Cutler's interceptions don't affect the receivers necessarily. You don't get negative points for an interception if you're a wide receiver. And he's going to sling it all over the place. He's going to throw the ball in places where he probably shouldn't, but give those receivers a chance to sort of do their thing. So I think I'm with you on that. I think Eddie Royal definitely is someone to look at if he's not already in your league. It's possible that he was dropped, but I think definitely looking forward, I think he can definitely be a starter. And like you said, in DFS, he's extremely cheap on FanDuel, so I know he's definitely one of those value plays you want to look at. Looking on the other side of the ball, with the wide receivers in Kansas City, of course, the big thing was will one catch a touchdown pass this year. Maclin has done that, and now he's been good for 2 weeks in a row. Is this something that we're buying? Is this like a chemistry thing that finally Alex Smith and Maclin are on the same page and he goes back to being an every week starter, or is this something that just comes kind of a fluke?
I'm buying in. I watched a lot of Chiefs during the preseason, and they did have the chemistry, and they're finally picking back up with it during the regular season. And I think I would start him every week. He might not be the best receiver to go, but he's going to be top 20 every week, in my opinion. And I think he's going to get a bunch of targets. So it may not be a touchdown every week, but he's going to get a bunch of catches.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think Andy Reid has proven in the past that he can make a receiver, be viable in fantasy, and I think Maclin is probably the best one he's had since he's been in Kansas City. He's definitely much better than Dwayne Bowe ever was. All right, next game we got is the Seattle Seahawks, who don't look as good as they have in past, and they're going to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. Of course, the big story in Seattle is Marshawn Lynch, their Pro Bowl running back, missing this last game, missing half of the game previous to that. If you're a Marshawn Lynch owner, are you worried that this injury is going to be sort of a lingering thing for the entire season, or do you think, he got his week of rest and he's going to go back to being beast mode the rest of the year?
I'm worried about him, man. I'm just looking at Alshon Jeffrey, for example. He's had the same kind of injury, calf injury. And have you seen him play this year? The dude, I'm worried about beast mode for sure. But the kid to watch out for is that Thomas Rawls, dude. He's looking pretty good, and he's looking even stronger now that Fred Jackson, I think, also sprained his ankle. So I think Thomas Rawls could be a sneaky play.
Yeah, that's a good call on Rawls. I think everyone just assumed it was going to be Fred Jackson when Marshawn Lynch went down, but they actually used Rawls in that first game where he went out early. It's been pretty good. Now the Seahawks as a team haven't looked so good. They can't really protect Russell Wilson anymore. He was kind of running for his life against Detroit the other night. But I think with Lynch, anytime you got one of those like soft tissue injuries, it's tough. It's a lingering issue. I think LaShawn McCoy is dealing with a hamstring. Those kind of things, you think you're getting better, and then you go out and you try to push off on it, and you just do it the wrong way, and you tweak it, and you're right back to where you were. So I think if I was a Lynch owner, I might be selling right now. If I can find a buyer that would take Lynch off my hands, it's just a headache that I don't want to have to deal with. I would definitely be trying to sell Lynch, in my opinion. Looking at the other side of the ball with the Bengals, everybody had Jeremy Hill as the number one back to have in Cincinnati, and of course that hasn't really been the case so far this year. If we were to draft today for the rest of the season, are you still taking Jeremy Hill first, or do you think you're looking at Giovanni Bernard?
For me, it all depends on what kind of league you're in. Are you in a standard, or are you in a PPR? If you're in a standard, I'd go Hill. PPR, I'd go Gio. But the scariest thing with Hill is every week since week 1 is the carries are going down. In week 4, he actually only had 9 carries. But in a standard league, you have 3 touchdowns out of those 9 carries. So it's kind of a toss-up for me. It's 50-50. But I'm usually in PPR leagues, so I'm going Bernard.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. Unfortunately, I'm a Jeremy Hill owner, so I've been sort of, I've been using him because I don't have any better options because, of course, I took him pretty high in the draft. I was happy about the 3 touchdowns, but like you, I'm in a PPR league, and that's just, touchdowns are great, but they're also not going to happen every week. If he only had 9 carries, and I think he had like 35 yards or something, that's just not going to get it done if you don't get those touchdowns. So, yeah, I'm a little worried about Jeremy Hill. I do think that as it gets colder, I think we do see a little more Jeremy Hill. Of course, they play in the AFC North, where you got Pittsburgh, you got Baltimore, Cincinnati, even the Cleveland Browns. All going to be cold weather. It's going to be the kind of game that Jeremy Hill, I think, will kind of take over. Giovanni Bernard, his first couple seasons have been really good, but I think he hasn't shown that he can stay healthy. I think last year he dealt with injuries. So I don't know if he's an every down back. I agree that he's a PPR, definitely a PPR guy.